Hello, my name is Alan Diving, Advanced Research Fellow at the Upper Great Plains Transportation Institute. And myself, along with Program Director Brad Wentz and Road and Bridge Engineer Kelly Bankston, will be presenting an overview of the infrastructure needs study for county, township, and tribal roads and bridges over the next 20 years. The purpose of today's presentation is to review the draft report results with counties prior to the legislative presentation, as well as solicit any input, both on the study process, the data collection, and the report itself, and as well as provide information on the timelines of the study and the reporting moving forward. We held 4 regional outreach meetings across the state the week of July 11th in Devils Lake, Valley City, Mandan, and Watford City to solicit input in person. And this presentation is a follow-up for those who weren't able to attend those meetings in person. A quick outline of today's presentation. First off, the objective of the study. A quick history of the studies. This is one in a series of updates to the statewide needs estimates. We'll talk a little bit about how the study's progressed over the years. And then we'll get into the major study components: traffic forecasting, gravel analysis, paved analysis, bridge analysis, and then finally we'll wrap it up with presentation of initial results. Finally, then there will be a discussion of the future timeline, so where we are moving forward in the reporting and the report finalization process, as well as directions and information on how to provide comments to the study report as we progress. The objective of the study, first off, the study was directed by the 2021 legislative session. And our directive is to estimate the funding needs to maintain the existing road system, county, township, and tribal over the next 20 years. And the outcomes of this study are to be used for the distribution of the Operation Prairie Dog County funding as that becomes available. The study team includes people from all over Upper Great Plains Transportation Institute, all the way from our director, Denver Tolliver, myself, Program Director Brad Wentz, Engineer Kelly Bankston, LTAP Director Dale Hegland, Engineer Tim Horner, and our planners Sat Paul and Sherjad. As I previously mentioned, this is one in a series of studies on the statewide needs. We've studied county, township, and tribal road needs in detail formally since 2010. Over the past decade, there's been many changes to the underlying assumptions. As you can see from the 2010 through the 2014, the number of new wells in the oil modeling has changed. That's one example of changes in assumptions, but also there's been different changes in terms of costs over the years. So we've been updating it mostly on a biennium schedule. Throughout the process, we've additionally sought to improve the study through increasing the quality and scope of the data that we're collecting, or improving the analysis methods as additional data becomes available. And all of this is done to provide a more comprehensive analysis of North Dakota's local roads and bridges. The overall study has 4 primary components. First off, the traffic model. This is a statewide analysis of traffic patterns and volumes and focuses on truck traffic. This data is critical to the pavement and gravel analysis, as needed improvements are based upon traffic volumes, equivalent single axle loads in particular. We'll discuss that in a little bit. The unpaved or gravel analysis uses this traffic information in conjunction with county and township survey data to estimate the funding needs to maintain unpaved roads across the state. Gravel roads represent the majority of the needs in this and in previous studies. The pavement model begins with current pavement structure, condition, and traffic volumes, and simulates deterioration over time and recommends improvements to those pavements based upon current and future traffic. The data for this process is collected by UGBTI, but the most critical data is input from counties into the Geographic Roadway Inventory Tool, or GRIT. Brad will speak a little bit more about that in a little bit. Finally, the bridges across the state are analyzed to estimate the 20-year replacement and maintenance needs. The updated bridge analysis method focuses on the superstructure, substructure, and deck. As mentioned in the previous slide, the impacts to all roads are dependent upon traffic levels. First off, for unpaved or gravel roads, more traffic results in more frequent blading, more frequent gravel overlays, and greater thicknesses when they occur. And in the higher volume roads, we see utilization of dust suppressant and base stabilization. So it's all a function of traffic in terms of maintenance. The paved roads, again, the design of the road is based upon a projected equivalent single axle loads, or ESLs. This is a measure of pavement damage due to axle loads, which is why the truck numbers are critical. The more ESLs on a road during its 20-year design life, the thicker the pavement is required. Additionally, for existing roads, the traffic estimates are used to deteriorate the current pavements based upon current condition and structure until an improvement is required. To estimate these traffic volumes, UGPTI developed a travel demand model which focuses on agricultural and oil-related traffic over the next 20 years, specifically truck traffic. To evaluate the accuracy of this model, we compare the initial estimates against actual traffic counts which were collected across the state, which are shown in this map here. These are all the traffic counts that were included in the modeling during this study. For this study, we added some additional truck classification counts in counties which had sparse coverage in past studies. And on the map, the blue dots represent volume counts, which is the total traffic, and the red represent classification counts, which separate out passenger vehicles from trucks. And this provides better information in areas to look at the percentage truck and then estimate the ESL volumes in individual counties. The counts were collected by UGPTI staff, consultants in Western North Dakota, as well as merged with the counts that North Dakota DOT takes across the state off the state system on county roads. The study utilized a total of 1,718 counts across the state to calibrate the travel demand model. As previously mentioned, the travel demand model focuses on two major commodity groups, agricultural movements and oil. The ag model, we consider the top 9 commodities by volume in North Dakota. The North Dakota Department of Agriculture collects monthly elevator shipment data by commodity, which provides excellent information about the first farm or farm storage to elevator movements, destinations from producers. In addition, we consider processors such as ethanol plants, crushing plants, and mills as destinations in this as well. For the production side of things, we utilize Ag Statistics Service satellite imagery, as well as the county level yield, and aggregate total production by township for the origins. The oil submodel considers inputs to the drilling, fracking, and production stages of development. In this case, the well sites serve as destinations on the drilling and fracking phases. So the freshwater, proppant, rigs, and equipment all move to the destination wells. But after they go into production, they serve as the origin, which is the origin of produced water and outbound oil to other destinations. Modeling existing traffic is the first part of the travel demand model process. Since the study horizon is 20 years, we need to forecast changes in traffic over the next 20 years. For future oil development, we relied on forecasts from the North Dakota Oil and Gas and Pipeline divisions of the Industrial Council. Based on our discussion with those two entities, we've utilized the assumption of 960 new wells per year, roughly equivalent to 40 operating rigs per year. The graphic on the right is the initial result of our spatial analysis of existing oil wells. The red areas, it's called hotspot analysis, which measures clustering. So denser areas of wells here are shown in red. And these spatial models are used to estimate locations for future wells. On the ag side of things, again, we have NAS data that provides us the most current production year. But the forecasts are a little more straightforward for ag traffic. The overall acres in production change slightly from year to year, mainly due to either weather conditions, if we have a really wet year, some is out of production due to flooding, but also due to acres of CRP expiring. However, the changes in the mix of crops produced in these acres have a more significant impact in terms of traffic. For example, a shift from an acre of wheat to corn results in much more truck traffic, both on the inputs in terms of fertilizer, but more primarily in the outputs in the yield per acre. The graph in the upper right-hand corner represents the average yield per acre statewide in North Dakota for wheat, which is the blue line, soybeans is the red, and corn is the green line. And as you can see, average for acre of wheat in, say, 2019-20 is about 50 bushels an acre compared to corn, which is more than double that. So each acre that shifts from wheat to corn more than doubles the traffic that comes off of that acre. So this baseline crop production used in conjunction with the trend data based upon historical observations is used to forecast future production. And one note on the trends here, you can see, of course, in 2021 was a dry year in North Dakota, a drought year. So the yields for all the commodities decreased. But overall, if we remove that from our trend line, we can see we have increases in corn, wheat, and soybeans, or corn and wheat yields over that time period as well. So once we have the traffic volume estimates, the impact analysis can begin. For unpaved roads, maintenance practices vary based upon traffic volumes. A large volume of data is collected to determine and estimate the costs of these maintenance practices at these different traffic levels. Much of this data is collected through a series of surveys to counties and townships across the state. In the two previous studies, we've formed a steering committee of county road supervisors to help provide input on and to improve the survey, both in terms of easier clarifications, making it easier to answer, but also to reflect new and emerging practices that are becoming more widespread for gravel road maintenance. In addition, for this study, we also added a panel of township officers to provide input on the township survey as well. The gravel survey itself is asked questions on component costs, type of aggregate and maintenance practices, different traffic levels. But first off, for the aggregate characteristics, we ask whether a county uses gravel or scoria, and other questions about gravel processing. Two we mentioned here is whether they use specifications or they test gravel as well. This helps us a couple of different areas. It helps to reconcile the practices that are being used, but also to reconcile differences in costs from county to county as well, as additional processing will add costs to the gravel. The unit costs relate to the per yard or ton for aggregate, the trucking cost from the pit to the road locations, placement costs, and blading costs, among others. I believe there's a total of 6 or 7 individual cost components that are considered. The practices section asks counties to estimate traffic levels for how they define low, medium, and high volume roads in their county. We asked this on a county level because one county's high volume road may be another county's low volume road because of differences in traffic patterns. For each of these traffic levels, we asked counties to report how often they would blade the roads, as well as how many years between re-graveling and how thick of a gravel overlay they'd apply at different traffic levels. Additionally, they're asked about the use of dust suppressant and base stabilization usage at different traffic volume categories as well. Gravel survey was mailed to all 53 counties and roughly 1,300 organized townships, and the green townships shown on the map are the organized, the gray are unorganized township. We received all 53 of the county surveys back, 100% response rate, and roughly a 57% response rate from the townships. The survey results then are used to calculate a county-specific average annual cost per mile by traffic level. So for each of those categories they reported, we convert that into an average annual cost. Since these estimates are county-specific and the surveys came from individual counties, we can account for regional variations in a variety of things, including the gravel costs. So the cost of aggregate varies from county to county, region to region, as well as, depending upon the location, the length of haul from the pits to the average length of haul from the pits to the roads can vary from county to county as well. And the trucking cost can be a significant component of the overall gravel cost, depending upon the location and availability, as well as the maintenance practice variations from parts of the state. Blading practices in Southwest North Dakota are far different from Northeast North Dakota. So the survey allows us to apply the practices that the counties are actually using and work in their counties and estimate costs using those practices. In the analysis, we group miles by traffic levels: very high, high, medium, low, and very low. And each of these have an annualized cost associated with them. So we apply those to each traffic level and then sum up the mileages across the jurisdictions to come up to provide the needs estimates. One just illustration of the regional variation in the reported aggregate cost per cubic yard. So this is crushing and royalties at the pits. Here is what was reported across the state, and you can see there's significant regional variations. It gets more expensive as you go further west. One note here is Trail County is very high here because their reported cost is delivered price, so it includes freight along the way. So this is just one illustration of the regional variations across the state. With that, I'll turn it over to Brad Wentz, Program Director, for discussion of the Paved analysis.
I'm going to talk about the pavement analysis that was done for the needs study. We'll talk about there's 3 different phases in it: the data collection, where we collect pavement condition data, and we also collect the grit data from the geographic roadway inventory tool that's coming from county data, and get the existing conditions. And then we have a data analysis process using a AASHTO 93 pavement design model routine to determine the costs and the improvements that are needed. And then I'll cover a little bit on the pavement results that we got from the study. So as for pavement data collection in 2021, we did it similar to previous years, collecting the condition data. This year we used a smartphone application called Road Bump and traveled the north half of the state. The photos on the screen indicate we were in a sedan out there traveling the roads with students that passed over the roads, and then the smartphone devices were mounted in the center console of the vehicle to collect the data. Again, we collected the south half of the state in 2021, and then we will collect the north half in 2022, and that'll be coming up this fall. We broke it into 2 halves of the state just because we also, with the same students, collect pavement traffic data, and we needed to break it up so that we could have a kind of consistent data collection process during the summer each year. So we will collect the north half in 2022, like I said, and then for this year, obviously we don't have that data in yet, so we just took the 2019 data that we had collected and projected that using the kind of a standard deterioration rate to 2021, so that we have a statewide value for the pavement condition data. And then we also collected images every 500 feet, as we have done in the past. This was done using a roadway image capture tool that we developed at UGPTI. So we have the images that we can go back and evaluate those for the distress. The smartphone device only collects the ride variation of the road, and we have to visually look at the road to see, how many cracks are there and what the distress score is. And then we combine the two for a combined PSR value that we use in the study. There was about 3,000 miles just in the north half of the south half of the state that we collected, and again we're projecting the rest of the data for the north half. Like I mentioned, the road bump collects IRI data. That's an International Roughness Index, which we then convert into a pavement serviceability rating, or PSR score. That's a 0 to 5 score. But the road bump is using an accelerometer in the smartphone, and that's a little different than the North Dakota DOT pathway van, which uses an actual laser to measure the roughness of the road. So we did a little calibration process with running several state highways that the North Dakota DOT ran with a pathway van, and then we calibrated that to come up with a calibrated value that would be used. So it's similar to what the pathway van collects. So that the graph indicates that we were able to get pretty good match of that calibration process. And then just this next 3 maps really kind of show the results of that data collection for the ride and the condition data. The colors on there indicate the red out is kind of always poor, and the fair is orange, and then green is indicated as good. And then the background on the counties indicate the pavement mileage. So the darker the color, the more pavement miles that are in that county. Lighter the lesser amount. And you can just kind of focus in on your counties. Just a little hard to analyze this whole thing in this little presentation, but if you want to look at your county and just kind of see how those results look, these maps are also going to be posted on our website in the results area, so you can come back and look at them a little closer and see if it kind of matches what you think is going on out there in your county. So and then this next map includes a pie chart to show you the percentage in your county of good, fair, and poor. You can look at that and also compare it to other counties and see as a whole what your county is doing as far as the percentage of your pavement condition. And then the last one here is takes off the road, so you can see the pie charts a little bit better. And then also as a statewide average pavement condition for all the roads in the state, all the county roads. So this is you can use that to compare how you're doing as compared to the whole state. So like I said, you can look at your county a little bit, but then there's not much time here, so you probably want to look at on our website when we get these maps out and available in the report. So the other data collection, pavement and subgrade strength and depth, that was done back in 2015, where we ran a falling weight deflectometer and ground penetrating radar to get the strength of the subgrade and then the thicknesses of the pavements and stuff, because we didn't have all the grit data at that time, so we had to run that device. We've got most of the roads, but since then now we've had grit in place, and so we update all that strength and depth information with the grit data. And speaking of grit, I'm sure most of you have heard of grit. Almost all counties are using it in North Dakota and updating their information. The grit was kind of specifically developed just for the needs study to collect that data, which we didn't have available, or data that we couldn't collect. So stuff like pavement thicknesses and age and things like that. So, but we've added a lot of functionality to it just for the county's benefit. It's a really pretty easy to use web map based inventory tool. So you just hit our website and you can go right into it and log into your county and edit data. Also a lot of tools for viewing the data. Again, it's available in use by all the counties in North Dakota. We have 4 layers of information. The construction history is the one that's was initially intended to collect that data we needed for the needs study, and then we added stuff so counties could put in their 5-year plans, their construction planning information, minor structures, load restrictions, and we've added several items since then to like doing pavement condition forecasting and others. The links on there is to go to the grit homepage. Some of the data that we actually need for the needs study that's coming out of grit. The big one is the structural number, or SN. That is the number that's telling us how much strength we have in our roadway to carry the traffic that we have on it. So from grit, we're getting the pavement thicknesses and the type of pavement, and we're getting the base. There's a couple different top base and a bottom base thickness that we will get, and the type of base. And then subgrade strength, we'll typically get that from our FWD data that we collected, but counties can also enter in soil factors or other information about the subgrade that we can then get the subgrade strength from that, what the county has entered. And then, of course, pavement age is a big factor in it. So we get that from putting in the year of the last improvements. And then shoulder type and width, we also use to determine if we're going to do a widening project, or sometimes a road needs to be reconstructed just because it's too narrow. So we also use that in the data. We have, for the analysis then, we have, again, we're using the AASHTO 93 pavement design model that we developed in a SAS routine. Some of the design inputs for that model include the pavement serviceability rating, or PSR, that I talked about. That's the initial pavement condition of the roads. So that's what we've collected. And then cumulative easels, where we're getting the truck traffic. Al mentioned that previously in talking about the traffic model. So we're getting the easels from there. And then structural number, again, that's the kind of roadway strength, and we're getting that from the grid information. Subgrade strength is a resilient modulus. It's the unit that tells us what the strength is of that subgrade. And then shoulder width was the other input into the model. So these next couple of maps, I'm just showing some of those inputs on a color-coded map, so you can kind of see in your county what that data is looking like. And this first one is the equivalent single axle loads, cumulative easels over 20 years. And when you get up, the red's over 1.5 million. You get over 1 million, and that's typically where that's quite a few easels, and you're having to have a significantly thicker pavements and a better structure to handle those loadings. You can see up in the oil country, there's a lot of those red type roads, and where they have the high cumulative easels, and also around some of the urban areas will have those types of easels. And then the next one is structural number. And this, again, you can kind of see the red is indicating where it's a really pretty low structural number, up to 2, and then the green is a much higher structural number. So you can see the greens are kind of out in that oil country again, where you have the high easels, and that would make sense. So the higher the easels, you're going to need a higher structural number for the roadway to handle that traffic. So and then the last one here is just showing shoulder width data that we have from grid. The red or orange is 0 to 1, and the white color on here is indicating where we didn't have any data entered into grid. So this is kind of a little plug for counties to try to make sure you get your shoulder width information into grid if possible. We have to just make an assumption for those roads where we don't have it. We do review the images that we captured to try to get a better guess at what those would be, but it is important for you to get in and have that information entered in to grid. And next slide, we're talking about our costs that we used in the model and how we developed that. So once we determine there's a what type of project and when it needs to be done through the model, then we apply a cost to that, and that becomes the needs cost for that roadway segment. So we have similar, I guess it's not similar, but we have about a 12.5% increase from the previous study. So for bituminous overlay, it's depending on the thickness that gets put out by the model, but from 200,000 to 550,000 per mile. Reconstruction is at about 1.4 million per mile, and then mine and blend and reclamation about 678,000 per mile. Widening is we were adding 87,000 per foot to the overlay. So and then the concrete roads that we have generally are getting CPR projects, and that's running at 450,000 per mile. So we did look at a lot of data to try to come up with how much it has increased. Inflation has really gone pretty high here lately, but one of the sources was looking at the National Highway Construction Cost Index, put out by USDOT, and that showed about a 12% increase over just about a 2-year period up to Q3 of 2021. And then we also looked at the Association of General Contractors have some information on what their pricing is for bid projects, and then also they have the input pricing for things like building construction and stuff. So you can see the building construction is in red on this graph, and it's showing that it did inflate really pretty high and it went up to 19%, but it took a while for the bid projects to catch up because sometimes they had that bid into the project already, so they left it at had to leave it at the lower cost. But that did crop up, and that went up to 12.5%. So and then we looked at other projects and that were bid recently, and some of those were a little higher, some were a little lower, but in the end 12.5% seemed to be about a good average to use for the increase in costs. And then finally, this is a map showing the types of improvements that were put out by the model, and you can see majority of it is overlays. The whole model is really set up to maintain the system, so you don't generally get a lot of reconstruction unless it's got a really poor subgrade, it's really narrow, and it's got a lot of truck traffic on it. So you'll see quite a bit of reconstruction up in oil country again. That's just because of the really very high ESO loadings that they have up there, but there are spread out through the state, different construction projects. So these results, well, again, these maps will be on the website, so you can take a closer look at your county and kind of where it fits in on this. And then we'll be talking about the costs here a little bit later and summarizing what those are. So that's it for the paved analysis, and I'm going to turn it over to Kelly Bankston to talk about the bridge needs analysis that was done.
Okay. Well, thanks, Brad. And my name is Kelly Bankston. I'm the bridge and pavement engineer here at Upper Great Plains Transportation Institute. I'm a retired county engineer. I was in on the tail end of the previous needs study in 2020, and I had the pleasure of working on this entire study, and it's been a good learning experience. I've been able to work with a lot of great people here. So I'll be going over the bridge needs data and analysis of this study. So we'll jump into it here. The bridge data sources are from the Federal Highway Administration's National Bridge Inventory System. We dig into the 2020 and the 2021 bridge inspections and get all of the condition codes of the bridges on the North Dakota local road system. So we started out looking at 2,996 structures, and then according to the policy here, we extracted out the box culverts. There was 479 of those, and we also take out the bridges that are on minimum maintenance roads as well. This study has 53 more structures, bridges analyzed in it than the last study. We did also a separate analysis of culvert bridges, and I'll be getting to that here in a minute. So there were 17 of those added in into the needs totals as well. The bridge analysis methodology, the priority items are, of course, the bridge deck, the superstructure, and the substructure condition codes, all from the NBI. So if those are at a 4 or less, those structures are going to be drawing replacement needs. We also concentrate on the structurally deficient bridges. All on and off system bridges are looked at, provided that they're on maintained roads. We developed the bridge needs target, which is an updated version, more or less, of the sufficiency rating. And new for this study is the inclusion of culvert bridges for structures that are 20 feet or greater and made of steel or concrete. So the NBI is no longer tracking sufficiency rating. They have not done that since the 2016 data that they provided. Since then, many states have developed their own new or updated rating guidelines. So we visited with some neighboring states and looked at our sufficiency rating calculator that we had on hand here at UGPTI. And it was decided to include some special reduction factors for scour critical bridges, fracture critical bridges, bridges that are load posted, and bridges constructed from timber materials. And so this is referred to as the bridge needs target. It's for needs purposes only. The threshold for replacements is a BNT of less than 75, whereas previous studies have been using a sufficiency rating of less than 80. We did a comparison, and there was good correlation using these thresholds. Sufficiency rating looked at these three main categories: structural adequacy, serviceability, and essentiality for public use, along with those subcategories listed here on this slide. So by adding in the scour critical, fracture critical, timber materials, and load posting criteria, we've broadened the basis for bridges that are in poor and fair condition for the new needs calculations in this study. These changes were vetted through a panel of county people listed here. These meetings were held in the summer of 2021, and the changes were presented to them. They had chances to provide us with some polling results, and in the end, all of these changes were approved. So on the nationwide picture, bridge conditions in bridges in fair condition began to exceed the number of bridges in good condition in about the year 2020. So that's shown on this graph here, where the purple line is bridges in fair and the green is bridges in good condition. So we're seeing a similar trend here with North Dakota local government bridges, where in 2020, the number of fair bridges started to ramp up and the number of bridges in good condition started to decline. There is some good news, and that is that there's 110 less bridges posted for load in the 2021 NBI data compared to the 2020 NBI data, which was 684. So now that's down to 574. So there's been some progress made on work that's been done on bridge replacements in the field in North Dakota. These pie charts show the 2020 bridges in good condition was 56% on the local system here, and that's declined to 51%, with the difference being made up in the fair category. The percentage in poor condition remains about the same at 8%. For this year's 20-year needs study, starting out, there's 240 bridges that are in poor condition. This is a comparison of the 2020 to the 2022 bridge needs study results, just a general comparison. Bridge inspections in the last 2 years have put structures under more stringent inspection guidelines, and this is resulting in an increase in poor and fair bridge component ratings. These inspections are on a 2-year cycle, so about half the bridges have been through this, with the other half coming up in the next year. You'll note that on this slide, there were 66 bridges that had poor deck ratings in the previous study, and now that's up to 87. So that's an increase of 32%, a significant increase. Super and substructure criteria is also seeing increases, and the new reduction factors for scour, fracture critical, timber, and load rating in the bridge needs target is also a contributing factor in these changes. Part of the study requires that we also look at placement costs. So we pulled out bid abstracts from county projects for 2021 and 2022. We obtained these from the North Dakota DOT's website. And we also then include the approach grading costs, the preliminary engineering costs, and the construction engineering costs. And we found that the average construction cost for bridge replacements has gone from $295 per square foot up to $370 per square foot. So that's a 25% increase. And we've also seen that the maintenance costs have bumped up a little bit from 30 cents per square foot on average to 35 cents. In addition, there's a lot of bridges being replaced with box culverts, and the multiple line box culvert is the most popular replacement method. these costs have been increased from $750,000 to $800,000 for the multiple boxes. The length ratio of new bridge structures has also gone from 1.7 times the length of the in-place structure to 1.8. So that is a factor on the overall cost as well. The width is remaining the same at 32 feet is what we're using in our projections. And then I'll just touch base on the culverts that have bridge numbers. So there's 17 culverts that are included in the bridge needs analysis, and the culvert structures that are made of steel that had condition codes of a 5 or less, and the culverts built from concrete that had condition codes of 4 or less are included and based into the study report in the appropriate counties where they're located at. The total bridge replacement needs for 22 study comes out to be 698 structures compared to 625 from the previous study. This is down a little bit, showing some progress from the 2014 and 2016 studies where it was over 700. So there's been some progress made here, and that's the good news. Bridge maintenance costs were looked at, like I mentioned. So bridges not drawing replacement needs are drawing maintenance needs, and that's allowing for costs involving these practices, including deck washing, deck and crack sealing, and joint maintenance on the off-system bridges. And then on the on-system bridges, where there's ice control costs, also deck washing and crack sealing as well. Rehabilitation has been removed from this study report, as most counties are replacing their bridges that are in poor condition. They're generally replacing them with multiple lines of box culverts wherever they can. The maintenance needs that's being generated for all the bridges in the study analysis does provide an offset to this change. So this map is showing the location of bridges and their conditions around the state of North Dakota. The dots in red are the bridges in poor condition. The ones in yellow are bridges in fair, and the ones in green are the bridges in good condition. And the map also shows the shaded colors of the counties, where the darker shades of gray are counties that are drawing more bridge needs, and the lighter shades of gray are the counties that are drawing less bridge needs. And obviously it's related to the locations and concentrations, densities of the bridges. So the needs estimates, I'll be turning it over to Al to go over the needs estimates for the rest of this study report. Thank you.
All right. Now wrapping up the needs estimates for the county, township, and tribal roads and bridges. We're going to group those by individual categories. So we'll have the unpaved, paved, and bridges. So for the unpaved analysis, we have a total of $6.5 billion over the next 20 years, and in the most current or the upcoming biennium, $656.16 million. And a little bit later, we'll do a comparison of this study to the previous one. The paved analysis, $588 million in the current biennium for a total of $3.2 billion over the 20-year period. And note a lot of the paved needs decrease over time, as Brad had mentioned earlier, the conditions of the roads initially. So it would be repairing the roads in the worst condition first and moving it forward from there. On the bridges, in the current biennium, $139.42 million for a total of $715 million. And in you note for the first 5 biennium, the cost is the same. When we get into the initial analysis, the bridges that Kelly showed in poor condition represent somewhat of a backlog in necessary improvements on bridges across the state. And if initially they would all be improved in the first year, but realistically, there's no way they could, just in terms of engineers and contractors, could get those replaced in a short period of time. So those are distributed somewhat evenly across earlier timeframes. But the big takeaway is the 20-year need estimate of $715 million. Statewide, so combining unpaved, paved, bridges, and the total. So total over 20 years is $10.513 billion, which is shown in the lower right-hand corner of the table. And the top right, we have the biennium estimate needs of $1.3 billion. Now, how does this compare to the previous study? We've talked a little bit previously about increases in unit costs. So those are somewhat shown into the next graph. The column on the left represents the previous study's estimates. So unpaved roads, $6.0 billion. The new study, $6.5 billion for an increase of 7.4%. This is primarily driven due to some regional increases in aggregate cost, but also the hauling cost, which I referenced before, due to fuel prices. Previous study, we were around $3 per gallon for diesel. Now we're around $5. So there's a significant increase related to that. The paved numbers are up 23.35% from 2.6 billion to 3.3 billion, primarily due to the cost increases for components and bid prices that Brad mentioned previously, as well as some pavements that were previously improved now have deteriorated to the point. So over the 20-year period, they require another improvement. Bridges up 43.46%. Again, the large component there are the component costs and the bid price increases. But in addition to that, as Kelly outlined, from the previous study to the current study, we have additional bridges that are being included in the analysis. Overall, statewide, for all of the roads and bridges across the state, we have a 13.98% increase. This map is very similar to what was presented earlier, which represents the projected total needs over the next 20 years for counties across the state. We can represent the scale or the overall total needs by two methods in this map. First is the size of the pie. Each county has a pie chart. The larger the pie, the larger the needs, as well as the colors in the background of the counties. The darker the blue, the higher the needs relative to other counties. And the individual pies themselves are broken into three colors, black representing pavement, tan representing gravel, and orange representing the bridges. And this information, as well as other graphics and illustrations that were presented earlier, and this will be presented on our website, which I'll show in a couple of slides. So moving forward from now, in terms of the report and the finalization of the report, following the regional meetings and any input we get within the next couple of weeks, we will be posting the draft report on our website, ugpti.org, beginning July 25th. And from that time, the comment period begins. Any comments, we prefer them to be submitted by email to ndsu.roadneeds@ndsu.edu. And then here's the link to the actual location where you can find it on our website. We have a month-long comment period, and based upon the comments and suggestions during that period, we'll update the report and communicate to the legislature that we intend to have the final report for the legislative presentation available September 1st. Now on our website, this is the draft document location on our webpage. It's not there yet. It will be up on the 25th. This website is directly off of our main webpage, ugpti.org. In the upper right-hand corner of our webpage, there's a link for road needs studies, and it'll take you to this page. And you can see here, in the middle, we have view the draft report. And in addition, we have view supplemental information. All the presentations, graphics that we presented here will be available there, as well as any other road condition and cost data that we'll be presenting. So any of the data that went into the process will be found there. In addition to the link to any questions or comments, ndsu.roadneeds@ndsu.edu. You can click it directly and send an email. And then if you want to look back at the previous reports, we have archived both the reports themselves as well as any supplemental information later on in the website. So finally, wrapping up, if you have any questions or comments regarding this study or the results that we've shown here, again, the email is ndsu.roadneeds@ndsu.edu. or my direct line is 701-231-5988. Thanks, and we appreciate all of your input, both in terms of data and comments on our methods to date, and we will appreciate any comments moving forward. Thank you for your time. Have a good day.